Galion Tigers. This is Jennifer Allerding joining you here this evening. Just want to thank you all for taking time to be here with us tonight. I know that we are excited that we've released our plan, and we're excited to be able to have the opportunity to answer some questions. We've had several questions that have been submitted already. We're opening up the opportunity for you to ask questions as we go along, and so that's kind of how the night's going to go. So just wanted to share with you that we have a couple of individuals that are joining us tonight, so that way we can have that conversation with them and get some additional information. We have Trish Factor joining us from the Galion Health Department. We have Melissa Waters, who's also going to be joining us tonight, our Director of Instruction. We have Ronnie Reinhardt, who is our Director of Technology. And then we also have joining us tonight Angie Gimbel, who works with our Galion Online Academy and also did some online instruction last year with our students. So we have a panel of great individuals here ready to take your questions. Before we get started, though, I just wanted to share with all of you a note of appreciation from myself, from the district. I know that all of you have been very patient throughout this process. I know that it's been, provided some angst to people, and we appreciate the time and the patience that you've given us to share with you our reopening plan. We're excited about the reopening plan. We think that it's good for kids, good for our staff, and good for our community. And obviously, as we start the year, we're entering uncharted waters. We've never been through this before, and so as much as we believe that we have a wonderful plan put in place, we also realize that once we get things up and going, we may need to reassess things, we may need to tweak things, and we are committed to continually looking at all information that's coming in. Also want to share with you, as much as we're prepared to share information with you tonight and answer questions, that there might be some things that we just don't have answers to right now. We have been working around the clock on just getting the reopening plan out to you, and now we are continuing to work around the clock to come up with some additional information and answers to the questions as far as protocols, policies, procedures. And so, like I said, if we can answer your question, we certainly will do so. If we're not able to answer it, we are committed to getting you that information as soon as we are able. So, with that said, we're going to go ahead and get started. We have several questions that have already come in, and so we've categorized them into a couple different categories. We have health and safety, procedures, face coverings would also go in that group, and then we also have some questions related to academic, technology, and then we have some other outline questions. So we're going to go ahead and get started with those questions. As we're talking through these different topics, if you have a question that you want to share, please feel free to put it in the comments and we'll do our best to answer it. So we're going to start with the topic of health and safety. We've identified that as our number one priority going into the 2021 school year. And so I have Trish here with us today, and her and I are going to talk through some of the questions that you've submitted. And so Trish, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can't hear Trish. So Trish is with us. I cannot hear her, but we will go ahead and just talk a little bit about health and safety. Before we get into some of the questions, share with you some of the things that we are doing on campus that we've been addressing up to this point. As far as looking at the classrooms, looking at the buildings, disinfectant has been definitely high on our priority of things that we've been doing. So obviously we've been placing orders for different chemicals, for different things to keep our buildings and our classrooms sanitized. Trish, are you there?
Yeah.
Still can't hear Trish.
Uh-oh.
So, that's one thing that we have been doing as far as working on a cleaning schedule. We'll be meeting with our custodians this week, so that way we can address those areas, and so that's a high priority. Can we go ahead and move to Mrs. Waters and talk about academics? Trish, we're going to put you on hold. Not that health and safety is not important in today's world, but we want to make sure that we can talk with you appropriately. So we're going to jump to Mrs. Waters, and we're going to look at academics. Mrs. Waters, can you hear me? Okay. And can everyone hear Mrs. Waters? All right. So as we're looking at academics, Melissa, can you tell us a little bit? The first question that came in was, how do non-essential classes like art, choir, how are they being held during the school day?
So our goal is to have these classes. Again, we're going to follow the social distancing guidelines, and we're going to keep our kids as far apart as possible. Our goal is to maybe even have a choir or band, or even move them outside so that we can still have those things in place.
And I know, a lot of districts have been, I don't want to say eliminating, but postponing, classes like band, choir, and, those are things that we know that our kids love. And those are things that we want to try to be as creative as possible so we can continue to offer those to our kids in as safe way as possible. Our second question looks at splitting students up into academic levels when they're in smaller learning groups. This parent's child in the past has been put into smaller groups to challenge his or her level, and apparently this child is a little more advanced. So how are we going to handle students who are gifted or students who have special needs throughout the day?
Our goal is always to differentiate instruction for our kids, and so we will continue to do that. When we do group instruction, it will look a little different. We will hopefully have some dividers, also face coverings during that time because they'll be closer than normal. So our goal is to continue to differentiate and make sure that everyone's getting what they need at their level.
So very similar to what it has been in the past. So this parent shouldn't really see a big difference in what's going on with their child as compared to past years.
No, it should be very similar.
Excellent. Next question relates to specials, Tiger Time, incentives. What does that look like in the 2021 year, Melissa?
Let's talk about specials first. We're going to treat specials just like a regular classroom. Our goal, of course, is to social distance and keep the kids as far apart as possible, but still meet the curriculum and the guidelines during that time. Also, Tiger Time. Our goal is to continue to do those small groups. Again, it will look a little different because we will have dividers, hopefully, for those kids, but also they'll have to wear their masks because they're going to be closer than normal, but we will continue with those types of things. Incentives are going to look a little different. They may not be the hay wagon rides that we've done in the past, or the games where the kids get to interact. Hopefully we'll come up with something creative and think out of the box, but our goal is to continue to have those incentives. We know the kids love them, and we just want to continue to make that happen for them.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about extracurricular events taking place, field trips, assemblies, things like that we usually try to hold for our students, and what does that look like in the upcoming year?
Well, our goal right now is to get everybody back in school. That is our number one goal, our number one focus is to get everybody back safely, students, staff, and make it happen. And then we'll start worrying about that as the school year goes. Usually field trips for us don't usually take place as a district until towards the end of the year. So, fingers crossed, we'll reevaluate as the year goes on, and hopefully we'll be able to have those things available. Assemblies, the same thing. We're just going to have to kind of take it day by day and hope that we'll still be able to do those types of things as we go.
Good. Can you tell us a little bit about, do we have Mrs. Gimbel here with us? Angie, can you hear us right now?
Yes, I can.
All right. So Mrs. Gimbel had the opportunity last year, and we were fortunate that she was a part of our staff and teaching some online classes and working with some kiddos that needed a non-traditional approach throughout the day. And so wanted to invite her just to talk a little bit about what does Galion Online Academy look like, and what should parents expect? How is that different from the remote learning atmosphere that we saw at the end of the year last year?
Well, this year, most of the kids are going to have one teacher for all of their classes. All of their classes are set up on a program or on a system where they can see all of the assignments that are due. There's no assignments due on Saturday or Sunday, and there's no assignments due on the weekends. However, they can continue to work all throughout those days, and they can work ahead. There's no time where the kids necessarily have to be online at the same time. Since it's individualized, they can work in the morning, they can work in the evening, whatever works for their schedule. How we do attendance for the online learning is that kids need to make sure that they are completing a certain number of assignments or a certain percentage of the coursework within a week. And they can see all of those percentages for each of their courses. Maybe they want to work a little more in one class, a little less in another class. But as long as the average progress for the week is up, that's how we take attendance. Now, obviously, if they miss a day because they get ill or they have an appointment or something like that, I mean, they'll be counted absent if they don't get that work caught up. However, you can pick up right where they left off and just continue to work.
And how does that work, Angie, if you have a student that is participating in the Galion Online Academy and they're struggling, they need some additional help? What does that look like?
Well, we do have a lot of communication with the student and the teacher throughout the system. We can message each other very quickly. We can have Zoom meetings. We can talk on the phone. And if we need to, we can actually have some personal face-to-face conferences where the parent can come in and the teacher can come in, and we can figure out some technology issues, or we can do a little bit of instruction and planning out how they're going to manage their time and how they're going to make sure that they get done what they need to get done.
Can you talk a little bit about student choice with the Online Academy? A parent is asking, do students get to pick the classes they want for their child, or how does that work?
Well, at the elementary level, we have just the typical four core classes. We have English, language arts, we have math, science, social studies, and then they'll have the choice of music, art, PE, and possibly some other electives at the middle school. At the high school level, those options really open up. There's all kinds of things like forensic science or criminology. There's a medical science course that kids can take. I'm really, really excited about these elective courses because it allows the kids to dig in deep and study something that hopefully they're really interested in and can kind of give them a chance to do something that they haven't really done in the past. And courses that we don't typically offer here at the regular school.
Mm-hmm. And so
we'll try to follow their schedule as much as we can from what they had planned from before. However, maybe there's a class that they decided, an elective that they decided they didn't want to take or wouldn't be good to do online. We can schedule something else for them. And there's tons and tons of options.
And just so we clarify, because I think there is some confusion about the Galion Online Academy and what it looked like at the end of the year. This is a preset curriculum that students can work through at their own pace. Is that correct, Mrs. Gimble?
Yes.
Okay, and so then last year we had individual teachers basically flipping what instruction looked like. And so, instead of teaching those kiddos in the classroom, now they were reverting, and in 24 hours time, we had to make this work, but teachers then were instructing their students online. And so one parent was asking if her child will have the same teacher that he or she would in the classroom, and that is not the case in this particular situation. So there is a teacher that's assigned to our elementary students that will monitor, will be reaching out, setting up lab times if they're needed, providing individualized support. I know that there are many questions about students that are on an IEP or a 504 and how those services are going to take place. And so I know that you worked last year with some of those students. And can you share a little bit about what that looked like and the support that you provided to those students?
Some of those supports can come through the computer program themselves. Things like adjusting the curriculum, reducing the number of answer choices. We can add to the curriculum. We can take things out of the curriculum. We can change some of the curriculum. We're still working with our special ed department to figure out exactly how that's going to work. There's a lot of issues that we still need to address, and we still need to figure out how exactly we're going to do that.
Personalization came from you as the teacher within the content of that particular curriculum. So you were able to adjust that based on that student's individual needs. And you're right, we've probably spent a few hours today talking with our student services director, Mrs. Parrott, about how we're going to appropriately provide those supports to those students, because there are certainly needs that need to be met, and we need to make sure that we are individualizing them for each student. So you're right, we are continuing to work to make sure that we're providing the best service to our students. Anything else, Mrs. Gimble, that you'd like to share about the Galion Online Academy?
Well, I think that the best part is that the students get to work, like I said, at their own pace and at their own time. If they need to take a break, they can take a break when it's convenient for them. They don't have to wait until the bell rings. If they want to finish out a unit or finish out a quiz, they can go ahead and do that and not just leave the class when the bell rings. I think it's also interesting for the kids because they get to fly through the subjects and fly through the areas that they really know and they do well in. And then some of the subjects that are a little bit harder, they can take some more time, redo a test or listen to a lesson again or try to get some extra help for something. So it kind of saves a little bit of time in a lot of cases, but then it also gives the students a little bit of time on the subject that they need.
Absolutely. Thank you. Mrs. Waters, do you have anything additionally that you'd like to add related to academics going into the year?
No, I think that, we're just excited to try to get the kids back into school, and we're looking forward to seeing their smiling faces and actually being able to interact with them.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Gimbel. Thank you, Mrs. Waters. Stay tuned. You never know when a question's going to come up that we're going to need your expertise. Kind of going along the lines with academics, we're going to go ahead and actually, Trish, can you hear us now at this point?
I can hear you.
And I can hear you, so that's a great day. So we're going to go ahead and start diving into some of these questions with health and safety, and I'm just going to read some of them as our parents wrote them so that way you can respond and you and I can maybe talk through this together. When the common cold comes around, which we all know that it does, and kids and the staff come down with the common cold, what happens whenever the common cold meets all of the COVID-19 symptoms? Will we refuse to allow kids to be in school? How does that impact families, and how will that be differentiated between COVID and cold?
Well, first off, if your child's exhibiting any kinds of signs and symptoms, whether you believe it's the common cold, maybe the flu, anything along those lines, they really shouldn't be going to school regardless. So if they are ill, they should not be going to school. So please don't send them at that point. If they do start exhibiting any kind of signs and symptoms when they're at school, there's always medical staff from the health department at the school every day. So teachers would call down, have either a nurse, medical assistant. They would take them to the nurse, make sure that they get fully assessed, look at, okay, did you really go anywhere? Were you out anywhere where maybe you could have contracted something? Do you have seasonal allergies? They would look. Again, this is also another reason why it's really important to make sure that your final forms information and that medical history is as accurate and up to date as possible, because our nurses are going to be looking at that to do that true assessment on your child. So just to determine, do they have allergies? Do they have things like that maybe this could be? And then they will determine that.
Okay, then thank you, Trish. The next question that comes in from a parent: when a student or a teacher tests positive, what will happen? Will you shut down the building alone, the whole district? We also have siblings in other buildings. So kind of a broad question. That's a big topic there.
It is. It's pretty big. And the easiest answer is it depends. I hate to say it that way. That's not very clear cut for everybody. However, it really is going to depend. Every classroom is set up different. It depends on whether or not everybody was wearing their masks. Were they spaced out properly? How many people were they interacting with? So in most instances, a single case of COVID in the school is not going to warrant closing. Definitely not the entire school. It's not going to warrant closing down an entire building. It may be a classroom. It may be the students in seats immediately surrounding a student. Teachers that were interacting with in not wearing a mask, things along those lines. There's all these different things that really factor in. And anybody that heard Director Acton speak quite a while ago now about her layers of Swiss cheese, all these different things that you can do to kind of cover up the holes so that things don't go through. It's all these different layers of protection. So the more layers that we place, the fewer people are going to be exempted from school. The fewer things have to be shut down. So if we're wearing masks or face coverings, if there's shields on top of that, if people are 6 feet separated as well, that's social distancing, if there's hand washing in place, those types of things are all going to factor into this.
Okay. Thank you. I know that, from the district perspective, I already speak with Trish on a daily basis and a nightly basis and an every minute basis, but her and I will continue to have those conversations, and we will be working hand in hand with regard to any type of situation that comes up on our district. And it is wonderful that our nurses do come from the health department, so there's always that constant communication that's taking place, and I know that I certainly appreciate that. So, Trish, I don't know if you maybe just want to respond to this, but this is a question / I guess, statement from a parent. All of the students' employees should be tested before the school year begins to identify possible risk of exposure. Is there money available from the state or federal government to allow this to happen? Many people are symptomatic and are the ones infecting others. If we can pre-screen before school starts, should we be doing that?
Right. So that's what we would call universal testing. When you test everybody in an area, or like when they tested everybody throughout the prison system, that's called universal testing. CDC really does not recommend that, and neither do I. When we look at that, there's a couple different reasons for it. It does make sense the way that it was presented. However, when you get a viral test done like that, all that's doing is telling you whether or not you have it at that moment that you get that test done. So you may know this day, but everybody that's coming in and out of the schools, they're doing just that. They'll be coming in and out. They'll be going back home and being exposed to other individuals at the home. They may go out to eat the next day. They may go out and visit a loved one at a nursing home. They may go play with their friends. You don't just go home and school, or go to school and stay at school. So you're always in and out and potentially contracting this. So that one-time universal test, you could also very easily miss early stages of infection where maybe your viral load isn't high enough to be caught by that test. So if maybe you came into contact with somebody just the day before and your viral load's just not quite there yet, but it might be the very next day. So unless you can test everybody every day and get those results back right away, it's just really not very realistic to expect that to help us make decisions effectively anyway.
Okay. So, Trish, I believe we have lots of questions that are coming in. Are we prepared to get some of those questions? Or
Sure.
do you want me to go ahead and we're going to do a couple more of our pre-scheduled questions, and then we're going to hop in with some live questions as well. So, the next question is, what will happen if a student or staff member tests? Well, we already did that one, test positive. So what can parents do to help keep everyone safe? What items could they provide? What can parents do to help with this whole situation and keeping their kids and our community safe?
I think starting them off now, getting them used to washing your hands as soon as you come home, kicking your shoes off at the door, not trailing things through the home. So getting used to that for some of the younger kids and maybe even some of the older kids, if they are not working or out in the community much right now, getting them used to wearing a mask. Also kind of having that discussion with them so that masks are not stigmatized. It's okay if somebody's not wearing one because they have a medical condition that they can't, or a physical disability where they cannot. But then also, it's okay if you are the one wearing the mask. And again, everybody should be if they're physically able to. So I think that's one of the big things. Kids and stigmatization, I think it's really going to be beneficial to make sure that, number one, they get used to wearing it, especially if they're younger and they're not used to it. Getting used to hand washing and making sure that they wash their hands effectively. So, soap, water, make sure that you can sing the happy birthday song a few times through there, get into all the nooks and crannies. We'll probably post a video here sometime in the next couple weeks on how to properly wash your hands. it's something that we go through with kindergartners typically during Safety Town. And since we are not having Safety Town, we'll try to do some interactive videos and such for those kindergartners coming in, and maybe as a good refresher for some of the older kids as well. I guess some of the other things to keep in mind is, teaching your kids. Yes, it's a good thing to share. We always want to teach our kids to share. There are certain things that shouldn't be shared. So when we talk about having your own water coming in, don't share your water. Somebody forgot their water bottle. No, don't give them yours to drink out of. Things along those lines. Shared surfaces, keeping your distance a little bit, not hugging, no high fives, trying to come up with some cool interactive ways to congratulate each other without physically touching quite so much.
Thank you, Trish. I think that we are prepared for some live questions. Is that correct?
Sure.
All right.
Yes, we are prepared for live questions. One common theme, Mrs. Allerding, that we're seeing right now is related to the dress code. So I didn't know if you could go ahead and address that for those who are watching.
Sure, we can go ahead and pop that in. So currently things like dress code, open houses, those are things that we are currently discussing right now. I know it was our number one priority to get the plan out. That just happened this past Thursday. We do have our buildings coming back and our administrators coming back on campus here this week and next week. So those are items that we are currently having conversation about. We're hoping to get some more information released on that here as soon as we possibly can. And just so you all kind of understand, what the next part of the process is, after the announcement of the plan. Tomorrow we are meeting with several of our teachers on campus here, so we can look at those academic expectations and what they look like. We've had a lot of feedback from family members, from parents, kids, about what last year looked like and how we can tweak that to make that better. So we are doing that and working on that starting tomorrow to address that specific need. As far as some of the building things like dress code, those are things we're going to be working through here in the next week or two.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Yeah, another one another common theme that we're seeing, because we're having, we have some incredible engagement from our community, and I think we need to thank them for that. The questions are coming in so fast that it's tough to keep up with them, and there's such a volume of them. So I think we need to thank them for that. But one of the common themes I'm also seeing is related to busing. So if you can touch on busing a little bit for those families who have asked questions related to busing.
So are the questions specific to what it looks like or what the safety protocols are, or just a little bit of everything?
It's just a little bit of everything.
Okay.
Like I said, the big thing is, I think from what I'm reading, there's something about masks in there, asking, are they going to need to be worn? What does busing look like for this year?
Good. Okay.
So that.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of everything.
Yeah, so there we go. So looking at transportation, I know that our transportation department is working hard, to start the year and get our bus routes completed. We'll be reaching out to families the beginning of August to share with them that information about the routes, pickup times, all of that stuff that you would have seen traditionally in the past. You will see that again this year. So currently, our plan in looking at transporting students, we're trying to make sure that we have 2 students to a seat, trying to group family members together. In levels 1 and level 2, students, as they enter the bus, there will be hand sanitizer stations that are there that they'll have to sanitize before they get on the bus. We'll be loading the buses, and students will be going to the back of the bus and then loading to the front, so that way they're not crossing one another. You may see on days where it's not really cold or snowing or raining that the windows will be cracked for increased air circulation. Students that do ride the bus are required to wear a facial covering. We will have shields available that we've purchased. We also have masks that we will have available on the buses if students need those. Whatever that comfort level is, that is a requirement of students to take part in transportation this year. As students are exiting the bus, they will be exiting from front to back, so then again, they're not crossing one another. When we look at level 3, we know that we have 50% of the students on campus at any one time, so obviously the number of students on a bus will be reduced drastically. We'll try to space those kiddos out. If we can do 1 student per seat, that is what our goal is, and then again, families will be sitting together as well. So those are some of the things that you'll see. You'll see that your bus driver, you might not be able to see their smile when they're welcoming you on the bus because they'll either have a mask, a shield on, or potentially both on driving the bus. So those are some of the things that we're working through right now, and I think that's what I have to share with you at this point. So I know that the transportation department, Sherry McMullen does a great job, and so we're constantly in communication with her as to how we can do things to increase the level of safety for our students and our staff. We're also going to have disinfectant on the bus that's going to be between loads. Our drivers are going to help us with those high-touch areas to disinfect those areas. And then we bought hydroelectric sprayers. So you will see those being used on the buses, and so they'll be spraying the buses down between morning and afternoon routes, and so that disinfectant is EPA approved, is a COVID killer, and so that'll be taking place twice a day. So those are just some of the things that we're doing to increase safety on the bus at this time.
And I think, Mrs. Allerding, we may want to also mention that we're planning to do additional live segments about different areas of operation related to the district. So transportation, athletics, online academy, because from what you shared, there's still a lot of questions coming in. So I think, we want to answer all of them.
Absolutely. And so we did just talk about this today, and that is one thing that we're going to be doing in the upcoming weeks is planning segments that are going to be specific to certain areas. So I just got off the phone with Mr. Bond this afternoon, and he's going to be doing a segment specific just to athletics for those families that, want to know about athletics. Transportation would be one. Building level feeds we're going to be also doing, because we know that when we're looking at protocols and procedures within the buildings, that looks very different. What we're doing in the hallway with the primary and kindergartners is going to look very different than what we're able to do at the high school. So, we've released the plan, and now the buildings are going to be coming together, and that building team is going to include parents, teachers, secretaries, custodians, and they're going to be working through exactly what that looks like, so that way we can make sure that at each building that we are putting in the proper protocols and procedures to be as safe as possible as we can with our students and our staff at those appropriate areas. Same thing with busing. We're going to be having that conversation that's going to be continuing there to see if there's anything additional that we can do beyond what we've already have in place currently. Any other questions?
A lot of it, and again, I'm kind of generalizing some of the themes that I'm seeing. So talking about masks, face coverings, they're asking a lot of questions, and it sounds like more for your primary and intermediate kiddos. Sure. Will they have to wear masks during recess, or face coverings during recess or gym class, or talk about sort of where kiddos are going to have to be required to wear their face coverings? Yeah,
that's a good question. So I appreciate those of you that are bringing that up, because face coverings, we know right now they're mandated by the governor, and we're looking at grades 3 and up being a part of that within our school day. Our pre-K through 2 students, that looks a little bit different for them. We're strongly recommending that for those kiddos, not necessarily requiring that in all settings. Some of the settings that you would expect to see all of our students being asked to wear a face covering would be the bus, would be hallway times if they're transitioning and there are large groups of students in the classroom or in the hallway, if they're in the cafeteria and they're in line getting lunches, So, obviously while they're eating, while they're sitting at their desk, they're participating in classroom instruction and they're at their desk, those would be times that they could take those face coverings off, again, looking at the primary level. At the 3 through 12 at this point, we know that we have the requirement. We're trying to do some things to reduce that, working with Trish, looking at CDC guidelines. We have can't talk tonight. We have purchased shields for our kiddos and for our staff members. And so trying to provide some different options, I would say, definitely everyone K through 12, we're looking at ways that we can provide breaks, because I know that that's a long day to keep those items on. And so, how can we schedule that throughout the day to give our kiddos and our staff breaks? Looking at recess, our intermediate, our primary, those are the buildings that really have recess. And so that is something that the buildings are going to be working through. I would say that I can't quite answer that question because we don't know exactly what recess will look like at this point in time. I'd like to think if they're outside, if they're keeping their distance, that we're going to provide that break and that opportunity for them to take those those off while they're outside. So like I said, the buildings are going to be working through that as a team to come up with the best solutions for recess and some of those other times.
A couple of other themes, I guess, would be related to, and this is very high school specific,
Okay.
related to College Credit Plus and our Galion Early College Academy.
Mm-hmm.
What are those two pathways going to look like for our students?
So, Mrs. Eister is our director of the Galion the Galion College Academy, and so she and I have not touched base at this point, so she was someone that's on our list to talk to this week. I know that in the past when we finished last year that we followed what North Central State did as far as that instruction and moving online, and so I can see that being very similar to what North Central is doing, is how we would provide that instruction to our students. That's one that I think we need to write down and come back to here in the next week or two. So we will definitely get that information out. Those people that are participating should expect communication coming from Mrs. Eister and what that looks like, and she may be able to help with giving some of that guidance.
Okay. We're getting some questions around the topic of technology.
Oh, awesome.
Related to, the online academy and the technology there. So I don't know if we want to address those questions related.
Sure. So I'll go back to some of the questions that we've already had come into us. And so we have Mrs. Reinhardt here joining us, our Director of Technology. And so, Ronnie, can you share a little bit about what we've done with our one-to-one program, how that's progressed, and then talk a little bit about technology fees associated with that.
Okay. Can you see me, hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, great. So yes, we have been one-to-one for several years, and in our grades K to 2, our kiddos have been using iPads for the last couple of years, but we've been sharing them. We are very fortunate this year that we've expanded our one-to-one program so that our kiddos at the primary level will have a device assigned to each student that they will use throughout the school year. They will be kept in the classroom, in carts, on a regular basis. And then should the need arise that we would have to go to level 4, those devices, K through 12, would all be going home. So with that, obviously another expense has come up for us. And so we have expanded our technology to be K-12 across the board for everyone. And that is a $40 fee, and that will be applied also to our online academy students, because we will be providing all of those students with an iPad as well. So there's no need for our online students to use their own Chromebook or any device that they have at home. We are going to provide that for them, and with that would come the protective case, the bag to transport, when they pick it up, when they return it at the end of the school year, and the charger and the additional software that goes with supporting those programs. So, so we're very excited to be able to offer that one-to-one program to expand that, so that will help protect the kids from having to share devices and so forth. So we're very happy about that.
Excellent. Thank you, Ronnie. Can you also, we had a question about when iPads will be shipped. So can you talk a little bit about what does the device pickup look like, and how does that going to work?
So we do not ship iPads. That would be very nice, but we're not going to do that. We generally have an iPad pickup day. In years past, we coincide that at the high school with scheduling pickups and orientations and that such open houses and so forth. At the middle school last year, we only deployed during the school, first week of school. And so, this year we are waiting for shipment of new iPads to come in. So we're still working out the details on what that's going to look like. But for our online academy students, we will schedule a time for parents to come in and pick up that device. Along with that goes the need for all parents to have final forms complete, because that's where students will sign AUPs, parents sign the AUP, that's our acceptable use policy, and other back to school forms. So we don't forget about getting final forms updated.
Yeah, and I'm just going to put a plug in there while we're talking about final forms. As you're filling out those final forms, please make sure that your contact list is 2 or 3 deep, because if we need to get a hold of you, we need to make sure that we're getting a hold of some people. So, if you're not available, please have a second, third contact name on there so we can get a hold of someone if we need to. So sorry about that. I diverted from technology for a minute. Now I'm off my little soapbox there, and we'll get back to a question that I really appreciate that's come into us that I really think is important that we address. And so the question is how, if a household is eligible for free lunch, will a hotspot be provided for Wi-Fi? And so obviously it's important to me, thinking that at some point we could potentially be remote. How are we going to increase the access for our students? We're sending them home with an iPad, and what's going on with that? How are we addressing that, and what does that look like, Ronnie?
So that's a great question, and something that we are working on as a district and as a technology team. We are working with other service providers to find the best opportunities for providing access point or hotspots. In addition, what we've already done is we have placed an access point to our high school parking lot. So we really do have the ability for parents and people who don't have internet right now to drive up into the high school and connect to our district, either our guest network or the district network. But we are working on finding a solution to hotspots, and hopefully we'll know something maybe even the end of this week, next week.
Thank you. And I know that we are committed to continue to work on that, because that's important for our kids to have that accessibility to our teachers, to our curriculum, and to the staff that care for them. So we'll continue to work on that. Do we have any other questions that have come in that we need to take at this point, Mr. Stone?
We've gotten some questions related to, school fees and technology fees, but we've actually had some viewers answering those questions. So
hey,
technology fee of $40.
You're hired.
They're asking, though, one question, I think, and since we have Mrs. Reinhardt with us, when are the technology fees going to be due?
All of the school fees are assessed at the beginning of the school year, with all the regular fees that we charge. That's not anything that they have to pay up front before they receive their device. They're going to be given the device regardless, and then they can pay those as it's convenient for them.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and jump to some questions that we have that have been submitted to us previously, just regarding procedures. And I know that you all know that I just already said that we're going to be working on that at the building levels, but we did have several questions about lunch in the cafeteria and what that looks like. And so again, that's going to look different based on the buildings, and they're working on that. I can tell you, overall that we are looking at each building trying to provide as much space as possible, trying to be as creative, maybe coming up with additional lunch periods so that way we're able to space our students out. I know that when I walked into the high school lunch last year, we had kiddos everywhere. And so, we've challenged the buildings and the administrators to, look at that so that way we can make sure that, we were not going to see that same thing again this year. I know the kids all love to be together, but we need to reduce that size. And so, we're committed to doing that. They'll be working on that. And again, it might look different from one building to the next. Some of the other questions that came up, I thought this was an excellent question. What if COVID level changes? How are we going to adjust to that? And so we do know that that level that they define our county as, 1, 2, 3, or 4, that takes place on a Thursday. That's not changed, Trish. Is that correct? That's still going to take place on Thursdays? Okay. And so when we get that leveling system, unless we're at a level 4, we're going to finish out that Friday the way that we began the week, and then we will start the next week with whatever that new level or new plan happens to be. So again, I know that Trish and I are in constant communication, so she's able to maybe foresee what's going to happen a couple of days in advance, and so hopefully we'll be able to provide people some, hey, be thinking about what things look like as we're moving into the next week here. Another question that also I'm glad that somebody asked that's important to me, when we're looking at that level 3 and we're at bringing our students in 50%, we're still working on what that looks like. We're real close to releasing that information, but it's important for all of you to know that we are trying to keep families, we will be keeping families together. So we know that there are situations where, households have different last names, and, if we divide alphabetically, that could create a separation. And so we're committed to keeping those families, here on campus on the same day. So we will definitely be addressing that. Some other questions came into play about discipline. So will there be discipline in place when my child refuses to wear a shield or a mask? I guess that would just depend on, are we under the governor's orders? What's your child's grade level? Are they required at that point? Is it strongly recommended? Our initial conversations about that, face coverings would be in with dress code. So it would be considered a dress code violation. There would be a call from the building administration that would take place, and, just trying to figure out what's going on, how we can continue to support the child while they're at school and work through any type of issues that may be accompanied with that. I've already talked about recess. Mr. Stone, are you seeing anything else coming in that we might need to address?
Yes, and this was an interesting one that I think we need to take a minute to talk about.
Okay.
I'm going to read this verbatim, and if it's okay with you, I'll respond to this one.
Okay.
My daughter wants to know why all of you are in different rooms instead of sitting together talking if it is safe for the kids to be at school. It's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's one that we are trying to model the behavior, and I'm speaking as a dad with children in this school. We're modeling the behavior that we want to see from our students. And so we're practicing that. Plus it's 8 o'clock. It's almost 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
And so we have folks who are at home. We have folks who are in other locations, but we're trying to practice what we preach with relation to the social distancing. We all wore masks when we came in, and we have the technology to be able to do this. So why not take advantage of the technology that we have? So I just found that to be a very interesting observation by one of our by a daughter of one of our viewers.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything else that's coming in?
At this point, there were questions about the iPads, but we did talk technology, and I think there are a lot of class lists. We need to get that information out. I know we're working on finalizing all that on the website. I'm just looking back through. did we talk, and again, I'm shuffling between
That's
a lot
okay. We
here.
just want to make sure we're getting everyone's questions answered, so we're vetting through everything once again.
Or some themes. Did we speak about students with special needs who are going to be involved in the online academy?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Yes, we did.
Okay. So there's
You know, there was one question that came in that it's kind of personal to me, and I want to make sure that we address it. It did deal with medically frail special needs children. You know, stating that most of the special needs community feels that we're pushing all of the special needs children to the wayside, not taking all of you into consideration for reopening the school, only wanting to please those who want their kids back in school and not wearing masks. So, you know, the concern there is that, you know, by not requiring students to wear masks, that we are jeopardizing our medically frail students. And I guess I just want to let you know that I'm one of those parents that has a medically frail child going to Galion City Schools. And so, you know, certainly, you know, that kind of broke my heart a little bit, that that's the perception, that we are pushing those kiddos aside, because certainly, you know, I am in that situation myself and thinking about my little guys. I'm thinking about all of your children. And, you know, I know that, you know, there's a lot that goes into having a child that has medical issues. And so I guess I apologize if this parent is feeling that way. That's not the intention at all. We're working really hard to try to address that specific area and working with our student service director. And so hopefully when we're able to get a hold of you and discuss what that looks like, that will make you feel a little bit better. I would encourage that parent, whoever you are, to please reach out to me personally. I would be more interested in talking to you, so that way you feel comfortable with your child's situation. Mrs. Waters, do you have anything else that you want to share to kind of round out the night academically?
I do not.
No? Okay. So we're going to check her off the list. Done. Trish, do you have anything else from the health department or anything that you want to share?
I think I'm trying to sift through some of the questions and stuff. I'm looking at this live as well. If you see me looking down, I'm looking at my cell phone at some of the live feed questions. And it did look like there were quite a few questions still on masks or face coverings.
Okay.
And just to kind of reiterate some of what you had shared before, and if anybody misinterpreted, when people are exercising, they should not be wearing the mask. If they're outside and they're able to be at least 6 feet apart, they don't have to wear it. Now, if people are running, jumping, playing on the playground and such, we're going to look at things like that. We're going to work those types of issues through with the different school buildings and everything. So we're still going to kind of come up with a game plan for those types of scenarios. But yeah, when kids are exercising, when they're running, they don't need to be wearing the masks if they can stay separated, those types of things. And a lot of the tips and tricks that some parents are sharing, either on this feed or on previous feeds, for some of the younger kids that are not used to wearing masks, the gaiters are a great option. For anybody not familiar with them, it looks almost like a sleeve or a turtleneck that kind of just slides up, and then you can slide it down when you don't need it. So it is really beneficial to have something along those lines, or if they are wearing a mask, to either have a lanyard or some kind of clip so that they don't fall on the ground and they're picking them up or losing them all the time. Some of the CDC tips and tricks for masks for younger folks too is making sure that you write their initials on it. You know, make sure that you know whose mask is whose, you're not losing them, things like that. So we'll try to put something together between the health department and the schools so that parents can kind of get kids prepared for things like that, whether it's a mask, a gaiter, but how to keep it safe. You know, if you have coughed in it, do you need a new one? Should you always keep a spare? You know, how do you take it off? Do you put it into a baggie? Do you just put it on your wrist? What do you do with it? So we'll dive into some of that, because I know that there's a lot of questions and there's a lot of misinformation out there right now regarding any kind of facial covering. So we'll definitely dive into that at another point in time. So stay tuned on that.
Yeah, thank you. And, you know, I know that, you know, I've heard a lot of concern from parents and guardians about, our little ones and just the ability to wear masks. And so, again, I think all of you are familiar with Caden, and so he's been wearing a mask since he's been 2 years old. And so that can be a challenge at times, even for him, having worn a mask for 4 years now. But there are certain things that, like Trish said, that we can help you out with, little tips and tricks. And I might even do a little segment with Caden and bring him on here and talk to him about, his experience with wearing masks. So that might be a little bit interesting. I don't know about that. But anyways.
I'll call my teenagers in and have them tell, what do we like? What do we prefer? And again, you might get some preferences. Kids that are in sports, they might prefer a different style. They might have learned, hey, this has worked for me in between practices. So.
Yeah. And I do know that our PTO is going to be starting a fundraiser that's going to support them here in the next week, where they're going to be selling Galion Tiger gaiters, lanyards, water bottles, masks. And so, that might be a fun way to, add some Galion spirit to this whole situation. And so be looking forward to that. Mrs. Reinhardt, do you have anything else that you would like to share before we head out for the night?
Just get those final forms filled in. It's really, really important that, again, not only for the emergency contact, but, that eliminates all the need for paper forms. And so it's super easy. All you have to do is update information if you did it last year. If you're looking to open enroll, or you're new to our district and haven't enrolled yet, check out our website or our parents enrollment tab. That will give you that information, and from there we'll get you started in final forms. But final forms is super important. We need all that updated information.
Okay. So as we close, just want to again remind you that our buildings are going to be working on protocols. So we will be communicating out to the families of each building about what that looks like, so that way they can see what are the safety procedures that we're putting in place in all of the areas. Also want to remind you that we're going to continue to do live sessions, and we will have them by athletics, maybe one on technology, another one separately on academics. So those are some of the things that you'll see in the near future. Just along with some other information that you will need to know regarding the beginning of the year. So we are committed to continue to work around the clock to try to get that information to you. We will try to go back through the comments that are on the Facebook page right now that we did not get a chance to address, and try to get those addressed for you. And if you have any other questions, feel free to email me, call me here at the office, or you can continue to use that link to submit questions, and then we can pull those questions from there, and then we can put a FAQ together to address some of those things as well. So I think that we are done for the evening. Thank you so much for spending your night with us. Hope we were able to help you. And again, we look forward to talking to you, and most importantly, seeing your kids here in August. Thank you, and have a great night.